Hello and welcome to She the People's first edition of the Creators Fest 2021. Well, today we'll be in conversation with three amazing founders who have actually changed the game in the universe called the web application, and they have been all over. They've been doing great things, and we just can't help but swoon over them all the more with the kind of content that they are curating for us. Well, we have our very own and dear Shaili Chopra, who is an Indian business journalist, author, entrepreneur. We know all of it about her, and we totally love her work with She the People as well. She's worked with NDTV Profit, with ET Now, has been people's favorite anchor for a long time, and has given to us like Digital Women Awards, Women's Writer Fest, Creator Fest, and so many popular shows. But here we are going to talk to her about the platform She the People, which has again changed the game for women across the globe. Anuj Gosalia, who is the co-founder and CEO of Terribly Tiny Tales, which is India's most loved social storytelling platform with over 75,000 writers, can you believe it, from around the world, and a weekly organic reach of 12 million. Then we have Simar Singh, the founder of Unerase Poetry, a platform which is basically for spoken word artists in India. But let me tell you, it's another form of storytelling and poetry that has touched millions of lives across the globe. To begin with, Anuj, we want to know, how has your journey been? I mean, we all know that it started from What's on India, then Bechen Nagari, but now we are here with Terribly Tiny Tales. So tell us about the trajectory.
Thank you so much, Kena, for having me here. It's absolutely an honor and a pleasure to speak with you and the community. My journey has honestly been anything but tiny. It feels like I've been doing this for a very, very long time now, um, and not complaining at all, because we've literally grown from a tiny idea, which was doing 140 character stories. It's just what who would say that this were to become a community of people who really care about stories, care about creating, who care about words and writing, and kind of just the act of creation. So yeah, we from telling these tiny stories, now we tell stories in all kinds of formats. And our last short film was 29 minutes long. It's a film called Binnu Ka Sapna, with
Mhm.
Kanu Bear, made by Kanu Bear. It's a beautiful film. It's on movie, but we're going to kind of release it more publicly soon. But yeah, the point being that now we're just also popularly known as TTT, and so it's really not terribly tiny, but just a place where people come to tell great stories, watch and consume great stories, not just in text today, but in animation, in audio, in video, in reels, and in all kinds of formats. And so that's our goal. Our goal originally, when I started, I could have done this on my own as a whatever small time writer, but I thankfully, through some stroke of good fortune, I invited some of my close friends to also write. And
Mhm.
therefore I think the we're at a great time where enabling creation and enabling people to tell stories and building their own communities seems to be the larger purpose for us. So we're at that juncture where we really want to help creators do their best work, build communities, and make money. That's really the play. And in 2021 we're like, hey, look, let's build tools that enable some incredible work from India, from Indian creators, and then hopefully across the world.
How all of this? Where did this start from? What has been the onset of the journey? Okay, Simar, with you first. How did it start?
Hi, thank you for your generous introduction. Um, for me, I don't think it was anything I was starting or trying to do. It was just like a pure passion thing as a student in school. I was not very invested in studies, and I always was more invested in what happened outside the classroom, and I sort of just went ahead with it. So Unerase was a byproduct of a lot of attempts to sort of find a space for myself, basically as an artist. And once I found it, to sort of create a space for more people like me. And yeah, I think I've just been lucky, meeting the right people and finding so many inspirational stories and lives around me, and that's what's led this entire couple of years in my life.
I mean, the way you put it across, it seems so easy, but I'm just wondering what was I doing when I was 16 years old, and what usually most of us do when we are in college days. While you created an entire parallel universe around you, what a brilliant thing was that. What about you, Shaili? How has your trajectory been from being a journalist to now an entrepreneur and taking the world in your stride?
Yeah, indeed. So it's been really fascinating to me how the idea of storytelling has gone well beyond, how we used to perceive it to be a hobby. That's what happened when I started out. They said, "Oh, but who's going to pay you for telling stories, right?" And I think a lot of us can rethink and remind all of these people who came behind us, questioning what we wanted to do with our passion, and wanted to change the world with whatever ideas we had. And we did. And I think that's really been the genesis of why I wanted to start, because I was already a journalist. I was telling stories in a very different way, but I was telling stories predominantly of men around the world, from Tiger Woods to Warren Buffett, and just feeling somewhat uninspired that where are the stories of more unknown people, and most of all, India's women. So I think for me, the turning point was pretty clear. I literally stood up in the newsroom and said, "Hey, listen, where are the women in this country? The last 18 editions of magazines have had the same four women. We ought to have a lot more talent this country can offer across ages, across opportunities, across genres, across languages." I wanted to sort of take the entire diversity piece and talk far more about women that were breaking ground as mathematicians or as fisher women. So that became really the inspiration to start this out. And I started, I would say, like, literally, this is my second career, because my first career was 18 years of journalism. And looking at something that was bubbling on digital, not quite being able to put a finger on what this digital would do, and experiment with what has been a platform that hadn't been, mainstream yet, made it all the more exciting.
And I'm also very much intrigued with both of you, with kind of names that you've given to your ventures. Why She the People, and why Unerase? Or maybe Shaili first. Why She the People?
So I think for me, it was quite a, sort of, the connection happened at 4 in the morning. And I'm the kind of person who will always have a little scribble pad next to my bed. And in the middle of the night, if something comes, I just scribble it, because God knows when I'll, remember it again. And as everything in one's dreams or sleep, you tend to forget pretty much everything that came to your head. So I scribbled She the People in 2008. The inspiration came from the fact that we read our constitution time to time. The preamble says, "We the people of India." And I said, "Hey, listen, we the people won't succeed without She the People." And it just stuck with me. That was how it was.
That is so brilliant. What about Unerase? I mean, why
Uh,
Unerase?
I named Unerase because I went through a breakup and I started writing quotes, and I had to I wanted to post them somewhere. So yeah, one day when I was in my school bus, I just started a Facebook page and I had to name it something, and I wanted it to be anonymous. So I just wrote Unerase, and like I was 14 or 15 probably. So I have no idea what I was thinking. It probably didn't even make sense back then to me, but yeah, it's kind of very casual sort of thing how it came about.
This is very cool, actually. And, it's the starting it at a point when you would not have even fathomed how far and how high would the name go and take you, for that matter. What a lovely thing to know. What goes behind the name Terribly Tiny Tales? Why TTT?
So it was just, I mean, one of those things, right? When I started was like, the stories were really short. So one idea was to do such short stories. Just
Mhm.
alliteration makes it
Oh,
more memorable, right?
such
Uh,
short story. It would have been
yeah,
SS then.
could have been SSS. Uh, and then Tiny Tales was one other idea, and I was like, one, you didn't get the domain name tinytales.com, so I was like, we want .com. So I was like, what .com should we get? That's important, right? So then this idea of like adding terribly, but then I shared it with a bunch of friends, and they were like, it's too long, it can get misconstrued. In fact, a bunch of people call us terrible tiny tails. Uh, and so even when we apply for jobs or internships, they're like, "Hi, is this terrible tiny tails? We're looking for." So yeah, sometimes we're terrible, but not always. So yeah, I mean that was it. Just wanted it to, the moment someone hears terribly tiny tales, it'll make you think a little bit.
So did you think of a payment model also when you began with TTT, or was it meant to be a just out there posting content on the internet, or did you have business on mind?
No, so contrary to some of my other earlier ambitions with startups, including Vech and Agree, and I started a couple of others which never took off. This was actually a passion project. It was something that I did as a writing project, and the hope was two things. One is it could become like a nice Twitter for fiction app, which we've already built. It's the
Yeah.
TTP app, and the other was it can become a book, right? Like so, and both those things we've been able to do. The app has 400,000 people who use it, and the book has been bought by over 50,000 people across India and the world.
Yes.
So
The
this
the 97 poems.
97 poems, terribly tiny tales, and With Love is a book of letters. So we've done 3 books with Penguin India.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that was actually the only business model back in the day that I thought of, which is it could become a book. Look, if people like it enough, we could take some of these popular ones and make them into a book. But I think as the community grew, and so this was before influencers were a thing and influencer communities were a thing. So we didn't know that brands would love this idea. And so I think once brands reached out saying, "Hey, look, you tell interesting stories. Can you tell some stories for us?" That's what unlocked the business idea that, hey, look, stories are universal, they're timeless, and they don't need to be limited to a certain format. So it's also when we realized, hey, look, we don't need to be attached to 140 characters. We can
Mm-hmm.
tell stories in all kinds of formats. So we launched in 2015 Terribly Tiny Talkies, which is a short films division. And we made some of India's finest short films, with Amit Masurkar and Vasan Bala and all these amazing directors who now make incredible feature films. But we were
Yes.
just slightly ahead of the curve and got them at the right time.
Simar, I wanted to ask you, now that you're in the field of art and you promote literature in a way, do you really think that numbers, followers on the digital platform matters? So there are so many good artists around who uh, are brilliant but may not have the numbers, and then there are the mediocre ones who have an entire fandom going after them. But what do you as a founder feel?
Um, See, for me, it's been a mix of both. I feel numbers are important, but they shouldn't matter to the artist. And that's what the artist in me says, that when I'm creating, I can't think of numbers, but the business person in me says you need the numbers to keep doing this again and again. So there's a practical side and an emotional side to it. Because I'm invested in both, I look at it both ways. So sometimes I'll make irrational decisions which are purely emotional, because I'm really passionate about something and I know this won't get the numbers, and sometimes I know I need the numbers right now or else the ship won't will sink. So I make decisions which are not emotional, where I know this is not something I'm purely invested in. um, the thing about a lot of great artists not having the numbers, and probably some not so equally qualified artists having those numbers, I feel that's a very interesting sort of aspect of social media, where the filters that we put through our lens of what is good and bad is so subjective, that probably somebody who you and I might never listen to because we think this is so basic would be life changing for somebody sitting in a smaller town. So I always look at it that way, that the impact an artist is making, if it's positive, it doesn't matter if I would subscribe to them or not. But the point that a lot of people are, and it's having a positive impact on people's life, that's important. Um, but definitely so many artists have not gotten that their due. And being from poetry, I think poetry has always been this art form that was always sort of in the background. Nobody really cared about it. So now seeing a lot of poets that I really admire and love getting attention, and a lot of poets that I also admire and respect still not getting that attention despite poetry being so big, is a bit conflicting for me. And I'm also thinking on how we can bridge that gap. But I think that's always going to be there, like probably if we look at our history, so many of the great poets like Kafka in his times was not even sort of considered a writer by his own family, and he became the so-called greatest writer of the 20th century after he passed away. So I think good art, stands the test of time, and I hope in that, because if we don't have that, then I don't know what I will do as an artist. But yeah.
That has been put in such lovely a manner. Art does somehow it does have to stand the test of time, and whatever's said and done, that is the truth. Shaili, I wanted to ask you, what is the reason that in last couple of years, say in last 2 to 3 years, there has been an immense increase in the number of women creators on YouTube, so much so that it has been nearly 60% growth last year, and almost 48% of the creators featured as the best creators of 2019 and 2020 have been women. So what do you think has brought about this change, this beautiful change in the creators world?
Yeah, I think, for women, particularly, this matters a lot. Having a democratic platform, and also having access to something that doesn't need a very large investment in terms of lift off. And I say that with an eye on the opportunity that many platforms have offered women. And this is not just digital platforms in the traditional large scale ones, but I think, like, for example, I would look at Simar's platform as a platform, or as SheThePeople as a platform, because these are spaces that are opening up a lot of new talent, a lot of new stories out there to the world, and launching them into this digital universe, which only makes it far richer. It's very interesting to see how every single day all of us as a young generation is finding inspiration in very, very different things. Something that wasn't the case, let's say, a generation ago, and certainly completely absent a couple of generations ago. Because one, we didn't have access to information. Second, we didn't have people who were making that information packaged in ways that we had never envisaged, from poetry to slam poetry to traditional poetry to just being able to stand up and make fun of themselves and get into comedy. I think a lot of this has become a new avenue of how you are going to tell stories, and that makes this very, very interesting, because a lot of the times people didn't think that they had the talent in them until they tried. So that's another thing that has come through, that people are becoming a little less fearful and more fearless about giving themselves a shot, which is very, very heartening, because we've always feared, right? And women in particular, are log kya kahe? And that's the thing, that everybody's using small format videos to see how people react to what they have to say, and you are a great product of that. We at SheThePeople are a great product of that, that we are able to see how we can leverage different platforms and say and talk in the language people want to accept and listen and explore and push boundaries with. So I think women have totally looked at this as an opportunity that was denied to them by the physical structure of many aspects, whether it's about going to a course, still learning through a college, going to work, and finding themselves at an office which expects them to do this, and all they do is open this and they start talking. Makes a big difference to how easily accessible this is. But yes, no question, there's talent, there's energy, there's tremendous amount of hard work that goes into this. I mean, I see some of the creators and I'm like, oh my God, they spend many hours building what they do. By no means any creation is easy. The only thing that has improved and made access relatively easy is the platform access. The talent, the creativity, top notch, great effort, supreme hard work.
So maybe we could begin with Simar, throwing more light on how do you celebrate the voice of rebellion on your platform and how do you amalgamate it with poetry?
Right. So one thing that I realized when Shaili was when you asked this question about a lot of female creators, and I remember a few months ago, I was sitting with my team and we were just going through the content and doing some just analyzing it. We realized in the last 2 years, 70% of the content we posted on YouTube was of female creators, and it was all very subconscious. It wasn't like we planned that okay we should put more women on the platform, but it just happened to be so, to the point where we realized okay maybe we need to get in more like maybe men or people who are not cishet or non-binary people, try to get in more diversity in that, which is a different conversation. But the point is that it was very organic, and that's what made me realize that poetry as a space has so much room for everybody, because of how raw and how personal it is, and how non-judgmental it is if it's done in the right way. So I feel that's been the backbone for me as well with curating content on Unerase. It's always been going with my gut, trying to find stories that have not been shared by people before, or trying to find poems that are important, that need to be said. And I feel in today's socio-political climate, like in the past few years, there are many instances where if like somewhere someone has felt agitated or wanted to say something about whatever thing, and that's sort of reflected on the content that we've also created, where poets have had stories which are on both sides of the narrative, or I have wanted to really talk about something, so we've sort of worked on developing something which is, so you can call it rebellious, but I guess with poetry, and since Kenna you're also poet, it's just living, like you need to when you feel you need to say, and it's when you're writing it, it's not rebellion, it's just like something you feel really strongly about.
It's like catharsis turning into, the voice of rebellion. Sometimes you just
Yeah.
do it for yourself and just liberate yourself out of it. Totally get that. Shaili, I also wanted to know about your struggles when you curate such stories. And do you get trolled also? Do you get into controversies? Does the reputation of She the People ever come under jeopardy just because of the content that you've posted across?
I think controversy is the second name of content creation, because you can't potentially create something that is different, stand out, without a question. And I don't mean that, content creators force fit it. This is natural. This is their second skin. You ask questions, you raise issues, you get people to sort of shuffle their hair and rethink. I think all of that is very central to any creator, and She the People is no different. When when we started Shree the People, of course, there was not so much happening across social media. We were more centered around our website, which still remains quite the mothership. But the minute we arrived on Instagram, and so did the trolls, they just followed us. And our trolls have all kinds of things to say. Not only are they anti minority genders, in which I include women, they are also anti having liberal views and perspectives in life about what you wear, how you wear, what you say, how you sit, all of that. So in case we at any point thought that the sort of the police was just a society, that society is very much present on the internet. And everybody from a peon to a politician has a view on what women say and how they dress, and whether they're revealing too much or inviting trouble, etc. It's just rampant. So I think it's been a very sort of it's been a road that's been an uphill one. But I think no change comes without a little bit of anger and a big mission. So I'm totally on it.
Yes, hear you. And just because we are also talking to a panel of founders, I also need to ask questions on the process of finding an institution, because that is something that's very intriguing to all of us who see you as as one of the end users. What is the logistic that goes behind making of a venture? Of course, you need to talk about your team. That is one thing. And secondly, how do you handle the logistics? I mean, the finances, getting people together, curating the content, planning a schedule, all of that. What is the grit behind? Simar.
Hmm. Uh, so again, because I started very young and I didn't look at starting something, I really didn't know what I was putting myself into. So I still don't know what I'm doing exactly. I just figure it out every single day. But I think you just learn on your own, and especially with me, the thing has been that my mom is from the entertainment industry. My dad has always had a salaried job, so I've never really had someone who's started their own thing, and nobody in my
Mhm.
family has ever done something like this. So for me to even get any sort of advice, I didn't have the right people. um, so I really don't know what does how does it work still. But I do know that you have to keep following your gut, and that's what I try to do every single day. And some days you get it wrong, and that's completely okay. In terms of team, I don't know, maybe I've been a bit of a control freak sometimes, but I do like being at the center of things so that I know what's happening. So I will do most of the logistics on my own, but I really
Yeah.
trust the people I work with. So whether it's the artist, I really trust everybody with the content. There are people who will sometimes share the content with me at the very last minute, which is something I hate, which is still happening because I have a show very soon. But I trust them so much. I know that they're gonna do fine. Um, so yeah, there is like there are people I trust them. They're amazing, but I still want to know what's happening and all of that. And I like figuring things out in my own. Plus, I feel I'm a learner, so I try to put myself in all shoes possible. When I started Unerase, I used to edit all the videos.
Okay, Shaili, how about you?
Okay, so so I think I agree with what Simar said. I think there are times when you have to do a lot. There are times when you have to do very basic stuff. But the good
Mhm.
thing is that you make no big bones about it because you've done it. That's how you got here. So I think that's
Mm.
one thing. The second is I think one should learn and know everything that goes on in an outfit. I say that for anybody. I mean, from those who run big large companies to those who run startups and creator spaces like ours, we should all know as much as we can about the kind of jobs that are going on within our organization. For me, the aim has always been to see how to delegate, so that I also make this more fun for people who are there. They're here for a reason. They want that opportunity. They want to be seen. For me, and I remember this because when I joined, when I started She the People, people said, "Oh, this will just be Shaili Chopra because she comes from 18 years of being seen on TV, and so your platform is just going to be about you." So I
Mm.
actually took a conscious step behind and said, I'm not going to make this platform about me. And actually, the truth is, not too many people still know that I am the person behind She the People, along with a very, very vibrant team that has been, with me for what, more than 6, 7 years. And that to me is really exhilarating because, for example, my colleague Rena or my colleagues, various other colleagues, Shivangi, they're all
Yes.
they're all different brands on YouTube themselves. And I feel very, very relieved and excited by the thought that I am not the only brand on my platform, which is so important for me, that others are the brand on the platform just as much. So that's right.
Sh- Sisterhood with Shaili is as popular as like Point to Hai, and still people do not know who are the like mastermind behind these curations. So yes, in a way, correct, absolutely. But Shaili, tell me, uh, but if you were to choose between Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, what would you?
So look, again, this is a bit of anecdote, and this is something I think deeply about. So I wrote the first book on social media and politics back in 2014, when our current prime minister was getting on the political bandwagon to understand how he was going to leverage social media. I'm a social media geek. I totally get what's going on there, and therefore, for me, the answer is not one or the other. In fact, I think there are many others. If you ask me today, we have gotten on to not just these three platforms. We are very much so driving our content on WhatsApp. We're driving our content on Koo. We're driving our content on Telegram. We are out there at every single platform that we can be. Why are we doing that? Platforms come,
Mhm.
platforms go. right? The power of creation is that what you create is going to hang around and it's going to be relevant to every platform that you put it on. Because luckily, off late content isn't always just, the essence of the content is not built for a platform. You can it's malleable to different platforms. Having said that, yes, there are certain kinds of things you have to think about, which are the tricks and tools of the trade, and there's nothing that I'm going to tell you that's new, so you can just Google them or whatever. Is that, the way you put content on YouTube has to have a certain length, a certain conversation, and I think it should answer the question why or how. And if you are on Instagram, according to me, you have to certainly have an element of entertainment in it, right? If you are looking at Facebook, you have to be very clear that your audience is above a certain age, clearly, right? So I think these things have to be catered for. A lot of my website traffic comes from Facebook. I don't even look at Instagram to do that, right? I'm still figuring out why LinkedIn is now becoming social media, and it's really making me wonder what am I going to do there. So I'm like, there are all kinds of questions. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's great to have more social media. It's a lot of work, though. That's just to
So,
be honest.
with She the People, because the kind of content that you produce is actually malleable to different platforms. I completely agree with that, which is slightly different a format when we talk about Unerase, because it's essentially
Yeah.
performative poetry that they do. So how about you, Simar? Would you also say the same thing, or would you rather look towards a certain platform or a brand?
So I would give the same answer as Shaili, but in the opposite way. I wouldn't look at any of the three platforms, but because I wouldn't look at any of the platforms, I would look at offline, because I feel
Mhm.
poetry and performance at the end of the day is all about what you feel in that moment when you're in front of me. And I don't think any social media can replicate that. And that's the very interesting thing about poetry and comedy, which really excites me every time I go for a show as an audience, because I have no idea what's going to happen and it's going to be a complete surprise to me.
You're also the founder. We're not here by virtue of you being a writer or an artist, but also as here because you're a founder of a great venture which has triggered a new wave in the webverse. I'd like to ask you, how important is curation of a team for you, or to find the right partner in crime? Because every time we hear of Anuj, we also hear of Anuj talking about Ruparel. So
Hmm.
it's never a solo project. You have always talked of the team that you are. So, how important was it to find the right man, the right people, the right team around you?
No, I think nothing gets built alone. I honestly believe if I had done this on my own, it would have been maybe a cute little community, and it would have eventually become perhaps just a book, like I said. So it was my
Mhm.
a stroke of whatever luck, and so many things play out in a venture, right? So one, that I invited other writers, and that enabled me to find interesting people, including Chintan, to partner with in the beginning. And then over time also Anshuman, who builds out the tech, who is integral to building the technology ecosystem, which is so important for the future of TTT, right?
Mhm.
So, and then the team, like, those people who sell these stories to brands, without which honestly there's no venture without the money. And so that team, the design team, like how the stories get consumed, there's just so many small things on the operations teams, the people who write. Yeah, it's just I mean, I've always believed in this whole Steve Jobs when he revered the Beatles, and said this amazing thing that the whole is more than the sum of the parts, right? So that is how I feel about ventures. It's just beautiful when, like, you can do beautiful things when people come together. It's on your own. There's only that much you can go. You can go fast, but you can't go far. So.
Simar, I wanted to ask from you: do you ever feel like you sort of become like a kingmaker sometimes, because you have actually put so many people under spotlight, and you have made them a brand now? You have been the person behind personal branding of so many artists. So, do you feel like that sometimes?
No, I don't. I think the opposite. In fact, I feel like through so many voices and stories, I have been able to meet so many people and be at a place where I can talk to people who I never imagined speaking to. And I feel like I didn't even give them a platform. I feel like that platform just found them. Like I was probably just a, बोलते हैं हिंदी में जरिया, but वो कोई भी हो सकता था. Like मेरी जगह anyone else could have done what I did.
Brilliant. That's the voice of a true artist. Do you feel that web entertainment will soon take over television or theater models?
I think the thing about all of these models taking over somebody else's space now has sort of been proven wrong pretty well, because first, when we started out with digital, we thought it was the end of the newspaper. The newspaper survived. People still said, I still want to feel it, even if I'm going to read the mobile phone. Ditto has happened with what Simar was mentioning. I mean, for example, SheThePeople started as an all digital space. In the first 6 months, we said that's not enough. We're actually an offline online model until, of course, COVID hit. So we, for the moment, got that off. But otherwise, according to me, there isn't something like, one will come, one period will come and sort of kill the other. Because as we are discovering, there's a power of the vintage, there's a power of what you want to go back to the roots, there's a power of detox, there's a power of saying I'm done with just mobile and social media. So I think there's a little bit of everything, which is a good space to be in. I don't necessarily feel like sitting on my couch all day and watching all the lovely movies that I want to. I do want to someday go back to the theater, and I do want to go stand in the queue to get popcorn. It's an experience I value differently, right? For example, I would love to go back to Bombay and watch all these poetry live, which I've done while I was there, right? So I think it's really something that that is out of the window. It's not necessarily something will come and go, and certainly it's not necessarily that what will all our hobbyist content creators, how will they earn. We're all in there doing our stuff. We're doing what is passionate for us. At the same time, we're making things work. It's turning out to be a model. A lot of people have questioned both Simar and my models at different levels and non-stop. But we are here, dude. And that's lovely. We haven't died. We made it through the pandemic, to which I'd say hats off to each one of us. And certainly hats off to everyone else who has managed to do it as well. So we're here.
I'm so glad that both of you are here. Is there something on your dream list or a wish list, say 5 to 10 years down the line, that you want to do ahead of TTT? Something very unimaginably bigger, but you still want to do it.
No, I mean, it's definitely not outside and ahead of TTT. It's within it. And, just to ensure that, one is that when we look at films from HBO and we look at content from, I don't know, Disney, we kind of look at it with like awe. And, it's like, wow, how did they make Game of Thrones, and how good is their writing, and Succession? And we're like in awe of the quality of production and skill and craft and writing. So I definitely want to enable that depth and quality of storytelling from India. That would be 100% a dream. The other is to empower creators, right? There's just so many incredibly talented creators in our country. And so to build the tools and the technology that allows them to flourish and make their communities and make money. I think creators making money, because again, in my early 20s, if you asked me, I would have loved to, sit at home and write, and then have these tools to make sure that I didn't have to take up a job. And so I'm like, hey, look, let's solve my 20-year-old Anuj's problem, so that the next, college kid in line who's like me, a little dreamy-eyed and wants to not take up a shit job just to make money, has the alternative, the tools that can provide the opportunities. Because also it's so hard to, if you're a fiction writer, for example, or if you're a certain kind of a creator, to find the brand that will suit your work, will suit your style. How do you grow? How do you learn? Those are all such ambiguous things, and I have only learned on the internet. So if we can curate that and build a platform that allows young people to quickly access these opportunities and build money and community, that would be great.
I know.
So
In fact, I, for one, know a couple of people who actually started with TTT. They wrote small pieces which got umpteen number of shares, and suddenly there was this urge in them to become a writer, and they actually went on to publish storybooks and novels. So I know, I personally know these people. So you have empowered creators in a big, big way. So thank you for the beautiful change that you have brought in the lives of so many people, and even for readers. I mean, just going through the flash fiction through TTT is very soothing. It's very cathartic sometimes. So thank you for being you, Anuj. It was lovely, lovely talking to you. We are very grateful to the kind of work that you've been doing, and we totally love your work, be it She the People, be it Unerase, the kind of content that you give us, the kind of inspiration that we draw from you. Uh, it is actually life altering, life changing sometimes. So thank you for being you. Thank you, Shaili. Thank you, Simar. It was